Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Talking Retro with Joe. This is episode 5. I'm here with Joe Cody. He is the owner of Atari2600.com. And how you doing, Joe?
John, it's great to see you again.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about collecting manuals, which is something that sounds like a lot of people tend to collect.
You know, it's kind of an interesting thing because when we talk about collecting video games, the number one thing, of course, is the video games. That's what it's all about. And if you look at maybe a sideline of that, you have the items that were sold with the video game when it was new. In this case, what we have here are instruction manuals. So what these are would be the game instruction rule books that were included with the game, usually inside of the same game box as the cartridge. It's not something that most people think about right away when they consider collecting video games, but I wanted to give an example today and show some of the different instruction manuals that are available and encourage people to consider it as a sideline or even their main focus of their video game collecting. It's an awesome way to enjoy the video game hobby.
So what are some of these that we have in front of us?
Well, right here in front of us is sort of a selection of some of the rarer books. These are all Atari 2600 instruction manuals. And you know, they range in price from about $20 up to almost $200 for a single instruction manual book.
Wow.
And again, these are some of the most, maybe some of the titles would be recognizable. Some of them are kind of obscure, but when you have a rare game, it goes to say that the instruction manual that was sold with the game would also be rare. In fact, the instruction manuals are rarer than the game cartridges by far, significantly. It's obvious when you start collecting a little bit deeper that what you run across is a lot more opportunities to purchase the game cartridges and far fewer to pick up the instruction manual. And instruction manuals are great to collect by themselves, and this is a neat way to display how a collection may look. But there's also a certain segment of the collecting community, and it's a large portion, that like to have the instruction manual with the cartridge. They may not go as far as buying the box because it really adds a significant cost to your collecting.
Sure.
But what a great way to extend your collection a little bit, to get a Kubert's Cubes, and then to have the original instruction book that went along with it.
Well, you think over time a lot of people will lose the instruction manuals or they get torn up over time, and you think there'd be more cartridges than there would be actual manuals themselves.
And that's certainly true. You're absolutely correct about that. And so collecting them for themselves, in not even associated with the games, is a popular pastime. So what I mean by that, for example, is you have the people that would buy the game and they already own the cartridge and they'd like to own the game manual. However, there's collectors that only collect the instruction manuals. They're bright, they're colorful, they're rare. They document the game, they show rules and information, company information. So in amongst them, just by themselves, without the video game being part of it, they're still highly collectible. And I think that they form an excellent collection, which also, by the way, ties into another part of video game instruction manuals. Is I consider the instruction manuals to be the #1 area in classic video game collecting that hobbyists can make money on. Very easily, actually, and we'll talk about that too. But I was going to go through maybe a couple of the examples here. I threw out a number earlier. Maybe it was $20 up to maybe a couple $100. But if you talk in total, there's 15 instruction manuals on top of this display here. The value for these 15 pieces of paper is about $950.
Wow.
So we're talking about some significant money. I mean, instruction manuals are a real deal collectible. Starting there in alphabetical, I just wanted to point out a couple specifically to you. Just on the top row up here, here's an interesting one. It's the name of the game is Chase a Chuck Wagon, which of course is a well-known Atari 2600 collectible. Have you ever seen the instruction sheet?
I have not. Now this game came through a dog food promotion, right?
It was.
Yeah. So tell us a little backstory about the game itself and how.
Well, there was a promotion through Walston Purina Chuck Wagon dog food brand that if you were to submit proof of purchases to the company with a small payment, they would send you the video game in the mail. So this was a mail order exclusive for the Atari 2600. It's a rare game for that reason.
How much does the game go for itself?
The game cartridge is, probably $85. They're not super expensive, but they're certainly a game that everybody wants in their collection and they sell really well. Now, the instruction manual, I would say that instruction manual, just looking at my notes down here, would be easily $50 to $60 just for that.
Just for the
and you can see that It's interesting to me a lot of times because it's not pretty. It doesn't have an illustration. In fact, you can tell it's just a simple piece of paper. You could easily reproduce that on your photocopier, but it's original, the original instruction manual for the game, and all of them are creased in the middle. They folded them across the center when they inserted them into the game box. So here's a simple text piece of paper that would look like nothing. You could write your phone number on the top of it and throw it away. It's quite expensive and rare.
What prevents someone from making a counterfeit copy of this? Because this looks like it'd be easy to maybe copy or counterfeit, right?
Right, right.
So how do you tell the difference between a legit instruction manual and a reproduction?
It's a good point. On this one, what you're going to look for is a copy would have to be electronically scanned. So if you were to look at a photocopy, even a high quality one, and you were to look at the letters very closely, you would notice that they're pixelated because they've been scanned digitally and then reproduced, even on high-end equipment. So what you see here is actually a printing. This was done on a print. It was made as a print, probably, I'm not saying it's lithographed, but it was printed. It wasn't done digitally. And you can see that, plus I guess you can also detect some general aging with it, but more specifically, you'd be looking at the printing on it.
Now, do people grade games? Now, do people grade instruction manuals?
You know, I thought about that, and it was something I was going to maybe bring up. I'm glad you did. Currently, the answer is no, but I think that if you look at comparisons to other hobbies, it could be paper-based hobbies like comic books or baseball cards or stamps. All those hobbies have grading services for them, and I think that the future holds grading in higher regard than it does now. Right now, you just have to assess it for yourself. Is the condition acceptable to me? Going forward, I do think that grading of instruction manuals will occur, and I think it will just elevate the prices even further.
Now, this is about how old is this game? About 30 years old or so? I mean,
35, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe it came out in 82.
Okay, so
83.
it came out
30 years.
30 years ago, and considering there's not much yellowing, and it's actually pretty good shape.
I know.
It's pretty good. So.
And it's so indescript that I'm just imagining that 95% of these would have gone right into the garbage. I mean, none of them would survive today. And so it's interesting. We'll talk a little bit about values, but I wanted to show one other one here, which is all of the game instruction manuals here sell for less than the game cartridge. Okay, so meaning if this game cartridge was 85, the manual is 75. And that's the case with everything on this except for one example. It's up at the front here. It's a small square one called Tooth Protectors. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So Tooth Protectors was a game that was distributed to dentists, probably through trade publications. And I know from firsthand experience or secondhand experience talking to somebody that dentists back then would have Atari systems in the waiting room, and the kids perhaps would come in for their checkups and they would have video games to play. Tooth Protector's instruction manual sells for significantly more, even up to double the price of the game cartridge.
Wow.
And it's extremely rare. There's a reason for it, the market fundamental. The game wasn't known with a box. It was sold. It was shipped to the dentist inside of a styrofoam container, so it doesn't have a retail box. So a collector for this is more than happy to have the instruction manual and the cartridge. The instruction manuals are just as rare as any other ones on the table, but people that go for completeness are happy with Tooth Protector's carton manual only. So it puts more collectors looking for this instruction manual, not just instruction collectors, but complete in the box collectors will settle for this, and the demand is up. The value on this one, if it was in perfect condition, would be $140. You can see there's some handwriting and a sticker on the front. It's going to affect the value somewhat, but I still have a feeling this instruction manual would bring $100, and the cartridge itself would be more like $85. So
something I want to know here. It says 12/25/83, so I'm assuming that's the year the game came out, possibly.
I believe it was a 1983 release. Why it has the Christmas of 1983 date on it?
Christmas,
it's late for the period. I would have thought it would have been earlier than that, but it's good evidence of when it was sold.
It's Johnson & Johnson. I didn't know they made
Johnson
video
&
games.
Johnson. and the publisher is DSD or DSD Camelot is how it's often identified. But Johnson & Johnson was absolutely affiliated with it.
Is it kind of like a breakaway? It looks like it's almost like a breakaway game, kind of type of game.
It is sort of like, I guess you could also say it's sort of like, it is. It's like a speed game like Tooth Protectors.
Cool. That's cool.
In regards to collecting individual manuals, and this would be an example of just high-end manuals for different games, there's other ways you can format a collection of video game instruction manuals, and I see this from our own customers, and I think this is a popular trend going forward. The first example, I'll just hold this up and show it to everyone. This is Space Invaders. Obviously, it's a very common game. It's an Atari 2600 game, And this is not a complete collection, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 different, and they're obviously different in size, color, illustration. Here's 6 different Space Invaders instruction manuals, and I know that there's at least 2 more that could be added to this. And if you went international, you could probably add up to maybe 10. So collecting is about achieving completeness. And here's a good example of some interesting game Space Invaders, for example, that you could seek out all of the different variations of instruction manuals. It would take you quite a while. It would be a challenge. It's not going to cost you a lot of money, but it would certainly be a significant challenge, and you would probably be the world's expert on instruction manuals for Space Invaders. It's an interesting sideline. And then I see people that buy instruction manuals because of the differences. And then the other way that people collect game instruction manuals, and I didn't count these, but what would you say? There's at least a dozen, probably more. These represent all of the game instruction manuals for US games, an Atari 2600 third-party company. Some of the games are probably recognizable. And so what this it represents would be a collection of every game by this publisher, the instruction manuals. And again, the proper way to just keep this in your collection wouldn't be to keep it in a pile, but maybe to put it into a frame would be wonderful. I think this would be colorful and interesting to have in a mount, or you could put it into a binder perhaps and keep it protected inside of a protective sleeve. And acquiring a complete set of US game instruction manuals is not going to set you back. Probably the most expensive one in here is maybe $4 or $5 a piece.
Okay.
But it's the challenge of doing it that adds some interest and enjoyment to your collection.
Sure.
I want to talk just a little bit about the financial side of collecting these, if you wanted to.
Sure.
Have you had time?
Sure.
Okay. Collecting and buying and selling, I would say for fun and profit, instruction manuals is a great idea, and I do recommend it. So we talk a lot about collecting for the fun of video games and playing video games. People also enjoy buying things knowing that one day they'll be able to make a profit on it. And I can think of no better way to make a profit in classic video games than in buying and selling instruction manuals. And it seems a little bit obscure because it's a sideline, but it's absolutely true. There's a reason for it. If you are a collector of complete-in-the-box video games, there's nothing more frustrating, and it happens to me as well, to have the box and the cartridge for Death Trap, but not to have the instruction manual. And you can look and look and look and wait and wait and wait, and you'll never find it. Another example would be even a rarer game like Music Machine or River Patrol. If you're looking for a River Patrol instruction manual, you are looking for a very, very long time to find it. So that makes it a market that you can take advantage of as a collector. If you have an opportunity to buy an instruction manual, typically it's with the game cartridge, you should do so because you can easily resell the instruction manual now or in the future and recoup a large amount of your initial cost to do so. The other thing I wanted to bring up about collecting instruction manuals is, and this is to your advantage as a buyer and seller, a knowledgeable collector. There's no catalog that tells you what's the value of an Atari 2600 instruction manual for Halloween. You won't find it. What's this worth? Well, the buyer isn't really aware and the seller isn't really aware. As a knowledgeable collector, you can take advantage of that lack of specific information and do well buying and selling these. And there's a rule of thumb when it comes to instruction manuals, and it's a mistake novices make, that they assume that the value of this instruction manual is somehow based on the price of the cartridge. So Halloween, let's say this Halloween game cartridge itself is $100. In their mind, and maybe from some experiences otherwise, they'll say, well, the instruction manual is probably worth 20% of the cartridge price. And that may be true on a very inexpensive game like Space Invaders. But on these books here, you would be making a big mistake if you were assuming that these are worth 20% of the cartridge price. The correct way to value these things when you're buying and selling them is to consider the fact that the instruction manual is just part of a whole. In a video game, you have the cartridge, instruction manual, and box. And you know what the price is for that. That's a complete-in-the-box video game. And you know what the price of the cartridge is. So the value of the instruction manual is somewhere between the complete-in-the-box price and the difference between the complete-in-the-box price and the cartridge price. So just take an example. Let's just take a hypothetical. If you had a video game that the cartridge was worth $20 and complete-in-the-box it was worth $100, the difference is $80. That $80 has to be the box and the instruction manual. So now you can apply a percentage, and The number that we use here, and I know that people buy and sell on, is about 20%. It's not 20% of the cartridge, it's 20% of the difference between the cartridge and the complete in the box. So in that example, let's say we had a game, I'm just using a general illustration here, $100 complete in the box and $20 cartridge, $80 difference. The instruction manual for that game would be about 20% of that $80 value, or $16. So you would have, this would be the formula, cartridge 20, instruction manual 16, and if I do my math correctly, doesn't that make the box, just the box, probably worth 74? Am I correct there?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the rule of thumb. So the value of the Halloween is, or not Halloween, but in that particular case would be $16 versus a $20 cartridge price. If you were buying it based on a 20%, you would assume that that $20 cartridge, the instruction manual, would be worth $4. It's not. It's $16. So this fact is a way for an astute collector of game instruction manuals to sometimes do very well on the buying side, which immediately translates into very well on the selling side.
And selling it, yeah.
Correct. And there's a huge demand for these. Like I said before, people collect them just to have them as instruction manuals. You have the second people that buy the cartridge, and then they want the cartridge instruction manual. That's the second person that buys these. And the third, the most aggressive buyer, is the person that has the cart, they have the box, and they want to make it complete. That's three different people that are looking for these. That's a big, big demand.
That's interesting. Do you get a lot of international buyers who are interested in this as well?
We do, and they fall into the same three groups. Obviously, some people are buying them to make their games complete. A bigger group of that would be the people that have the cartridge and they want the instruction manual with them. And a smaller group, but a hardcore group, is people that buy instruction manuals. And I'll just throw another one thing here. This is up at the front. I'll just grab it off the table here. So this is an instruction manual for the Atari 2600 game Z-Tac. So that's straightforward enough. It's rules and instructions on the game, but look inside.
Oh, that's cool.
So the game was also sold with an iron-on patch. This one happens to be Super B. So collectors of instruction manuals, or a collector that has the cartridge and wants instruction manual, or the person that has Z-Tac box and cart and wants the instruction manual to make it complete, would absolutely be interested in purchasing the iron-on that goes inside. So here you have instruction manuals, which are kind of a sideline to video game collecting, but then on the sideline of instruction manuals, you have things like iron-on transfers that...
Yeah, and the instructions to how to do it too, huh?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
How much would the iron-on go for by itself?
This one is being sold complete because to break it up really is kind of unfair. The person that's going to want to purchase this game instruction manual would want to have the other items inside. This one right here, Z-Tac, is priced at $85. In fact, the total price of all of the instruction manuals on display here, on the top, it's about $950.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And they can find it you sell these on your website as well?
Most of these, in fact, these were just taken from our store inventory, and so you can find these on our website at Atari2600.com. We have them in a category of just game instruction manuals. They're very popular.
Do you sell boxes by themselves as well?
We do sell the boxes. Their boxes are rarer than the instruction manuals, and what we'll try to do is add an instruction manual and cartridge to make the game complete, and then offer it in that way. But if we're unable, believe me, I have the same struggles trying to add instruction manuals to games to make them complete, and I'm looking for a Cookie Monster Munch right now. I'd pay $8 for one if I could find it. I've looked everywhere and I can't find it. So we do sell the boxes, and they can be added to your cartridge and your instruction manual.
Very cool. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks,
for
John.
your time.
You're welcome.
All right.
Have a good day.
You too.